I'm tempted to do like a bad idol impression, but no. Welcome to Star Trek, Season 4, Episodes 1 and 2, The Way of the Warrior. The one where Worf joins Deep Space Nine, the Klingons break off their marriage with the Federation, and Quark and Garrick discuss carbonated beverages. I will stick with the classic flavor of talking about the crew first, written by Ira Stephen Bear and Robert Hewitt Wolfe, and directed by James L. Conway. Now, Mr. Conway has directed at least 3 episodes in all 4 90s era series, including TNG's Justice, Voyager's The 37s, which are equally bad in my eyes, but also Next Generation's Frame of Mind, Duet from DS9, Death Wish from Voyager, and In a Mirror Darkly from Enterprise. So he has a veritable greatest hits of good stuff, and we were commenting on while we were watching along, because I had some homework for you. We'll do something new. Tell me, guys, which single scene jumped out to you for, dramatic flair or timing or blocking or camera framing, something that you remember. Stars, kick us off.
I mean, I think we were all just talking about how much they utilize ops in this episode, because you do occasionally get the interesting shots of ops, like you get more of the pit that O'Brien rumbles around with, which you get to see here. But just like the sheer amount of times you get to swing around a wall, track a character through, you play with the levels of elevation, like they just use the sets very, very effectively here. There's DS9 is a great set because it's such a different design to everything that the Federation has got going on. It's all more about elevation and making you look up at someone. Like even you mentioned that during the watch along, and it's just like good use of space and good use of existing sets. Like you've been shooting this for 4 seasons by this point, and you still managed to make it look fresh. That's a sign of a good director. And I had to take umbrage with the idea that he directed Justice in 37. The direction was not the problem in those episodes. Let's be real here. The direction was perfectly competent. It was everything else that was the problem.
So Dan, let's see if you can hit the brief. Single scene that has jumped out to you as something where they really hit it well.
I like the pause that we get. So throughout the 4 times that we're in Quark's bar, Quark mentions the level of activity and the decibel level, and his acute ears pick up on things, but they're mostly throwaway exposition scenes. But then we get the one scene with him and Garrick sitting down to have a nice beverage, and the way that it's shot is so tight and intimate, and it really lets you just focus on the context of what they're discussing with Kanar and the root beer. I think that the change in pace that they used for that scene, and the way that they shot it was so markedly different than the rest of the episode. It really let you settle and hook into what they were feeling and thinking.
All right, and as we've dubbed you recently, finish us off, Frank. Go ahead and be the third in line. What
Is your discharge papers, Frank?
Yes.
No. We're doing the review, Dan.
It seems silly, but I like the art of a good reveal. When Worf joins the station, we go shoes up, and we get the long reveal of Worf in a TNG era uniform with the new era pips or the comm badge. But I also like the reveal twice that it happened truly of the lift going up to Ops and the bridge of DS9. First Cisco and his smooth Daddy Jazz jammies. And then in the end, Worf and Red. I like how those two kind of parallel each other, and you see the serious man at first Cisco, who's just, what do you want? I'm in the middle of my day. It'd be like if Picard came on the bridge in his, I guess, gray uniform. That was his equivalent, I guess. He sleeps in it. So this was Cisco just, I'm still the man, but here's a different side of me. And then Worf at the final, I'm still the man, but now I'm different. I liked the use of rising camera.
For Star's sake, I'll take a Worf scene here. And toward the end, when he's in his blue Nybride Alliance uniform and ready to scupper away from the space station.
Pajamas, yes.
Yeah, we get our Better Call Saul chicanery slow zoom in on Chuck as Cisco's giving us, exposition about his life, why he made certain choices that now Worf has to face. And they shoot Worf over the shoulder. It's like from the side. And it's great because he doesn't make eye contact with Sisko while he's talking to him. And you can tell there's a little bit of shame there. There's the sort of symbolic turning your back on the Federation kind of thing. And then, when Sisko calls out, "I could run all the way to the Nybride line." It's a great line, by the way. You can kind of see his reaction like that one hurt him. So, it's great because, it's not a shot that we get a lot of the time, but also the symbolism there, I think, matches up what Worf is supposed to be feeling throughout the scene. So I'll swing back around to you, Stars. Do you have a single one that jumps out to you?
Apparently, all the ones I singled out were not single scenes, but
right.
The entire episode. So
All right. So this is the beginning of season 4, and the last episode of season 3 was kind of a cliffhanger. It was called The Adversary, and that's one that I had on VHS as a kid. I had the Captain's Collection. It was Voyager's caretaker, TNG's family, and then this one. And so I've seen it like a billion times on tape. And it ends with the Changeling infiltrator telling Odo we're already here. So the Changeling storyline is there. At the end of that's my memory alpha voice. At the end of the 3rd season, falling ratings had led the studio, giving the producers a mandate to do something to shake up the series. Initially, there was some discussion about having the Vulcans leave the Federation. However, Ira Stephen Bear, after discussing things with writer Ronald D. Moore, decided to pitch this Klingon angle to Rick Berman. They presented the idea to producers who liked it, but wanted something more, resulting in Worf joining the cast. Fellas, was that a good, big shakeup, or would you have done things differently? And we can go as big or small as you like. If you're writing a big, mid-series shakeup to get people reinvested, is it this story or is it something else? We'll go reverse order, Frank.
I think it is the story. And I think they do a really good job of taking this 2-part episode, laying out, hey, here's going to be your storyline for the next, they didn't know they were going to go 7 seasons, but here's going to ultimately be your storyline for the next 3 years. And it's going to take a minute to get there, but here's all the key players. Here's what's going to happen. Sure, we'll take a break and we'll go play baseball. Sure, we'll take a break and go do something else. But there's going to always be this overarching theme that's going to take you through for the rest of the series, which makes sense because unlike any other Star Trek, this is a stationary trek. This is not a ship that goes places. This is a space station that stays put. So you can only have so many stories. The stories have to come to you. So I think it's great.
Dan, what about you?
So there were a few choices they could have made. They could have made the show more mobile if they wanted to reinvent, get off the station, explore the Dominion, the Gamma Quadrant some more, use the Defiant as more of an Enterprise type vessel, and do some seeking out. They resisted that temptation. I think it's the right move. But then with them being grounded in the locality of Bajor, they, one of the things the writers did, especially in season 2, was they kind of took the role of the Cardassians, beat the Bajorians to death. The storyline was just so overdone, and just all the prophets and the Vedics and stuff. It never really landed for me. So I think that they chose the right thing. They needed to bring in a little bit of a taste of what people remembered. Dorn was free. The movie was done. Why not bring back a little bit of the chemistry with him and O'Brien? That was the real reinvention that they had done. Really, I think the storyline was secondary to just making this familiar member of the main crew just appear on the bridge. And I was really happy to see just so many scenes. I think Dorn and Brooks really just played so well off of each other. I think that there's a strength that they both share on the screen. Really made it interesting for me. And to be honest, it didn't matter who they fought, whether this was the Klingons. They were the most memorable. We had the most development of ships. We got a new ship to look at for Klingons. But I was happy for that bit of familiarity. They had their 7 of 9 moment, right? We've got to bring something interesting and visually appealing to the series. So here's somebody you all know and love.
And they both look so delicious too. What?
I was just picturing Michael Dorn in high heels. I think he, All right, if you can pull that image from your mind for a second, Stars, are you going to make this a hat trick? Is this the perfect, pull for people, or would you have shaken things up differently?
So first off, you mentioned Roland D. Moore, and I'm utterly unsurprised that he's the architect of let's bring in the Klingons in, because they are utterly his project. He was behind so many of the Klingon storylines in TNG. And I think that their instincts, like, you can really tell why they were dealing with like lower ratings. Because guess what? When I did my full watch through of DS9, I'd watched like most of it, but I hadn't watched it through sequentially all the way through, just episode after episode. And I like a lot of that Bajoran stuff, like Dan. Like but it is slow and it's very anthropological. Like you're learning all about the different stratums of like Bajoran society, and there's just a lot of it. It doesn't get broken up very often. And the idea that they were like, we need a new storyline that will shake things up. What if the Vulcans lead the Federation? And I'm like, guys, that is the fucking dumbest idea I've ever heard. Not because of the lore. Guess what? Like, we explored this in Discovery. Who cares? Star Trek nerds care, but Star Trek nerds are already watching your show. They're not the casual viewers you're worried about. And it's like, you're a Bajoran space station part at the edge of the Gamma Quadrant. Why the fuck do we give a fuck about the Vulcans? What have they got anything to do with DS9? It's one thing if you're in TNG, sure, fine, do that storyline. But we're stuck here. You have to reject the entire. It's a silly idea, and you can kind of see why they were struggling to retain ratings because it's like, I get that you're all about the politics, but you need to have a bit of action going on every now and then. And it's very strange to me that like they had to think about this in such a way. It's like they've got the Dominion on the table. They've been building up to Dominion since what, season 1, season 2, with the whole thing with the Dosai. They've been all the hints of the Gamma Quadrant, what's in there. And it's like, okay, so we know we're leading up to the Dominion War. There's literally no way that these two opposing powers cannot come into conflict. And if you're going to do a war, you need multiple fronts, you need multiple combatants. You're going to go for like a big multi, species thing just for pure visual variety. Sorry. And it's like, yes, the Klingons make the most logical sense because they love a fight, they're the most popular, and they're the ones we know the best. It's like, you're not going to bring in the Romulans because that makes no sense. It's like, who else? The Breen, who don't exist yet? Like, it's just the most logical move. And I also feel like bringing in Worf specifically, yes, it makes a ton of logistical sense. But you could have gotten anyone on TNG if you really wanted to. You could have gotten Geordi, you could have gotten Riker, you could have gotten like Data even. You could have potentially pulled that. But the thing is, they chose Worf because he's antisocial. Worf is inherently antagonistic. He's grumpy. He is often unhappy. He fits right in on DS9. Guess what? Like, we've already hit the point in DS9 where Kira is kind of defanged. Kira is nice now. She hangs out with Dax in the holosuites and does Hubishan darts. Like, she is no longer the rabble rouser that you get in season 1, episode 1. She's on too good terms with everyone else. We need more antagonistic flavor, and Worf gives us that. And among the TNG cast, the only other person who I could think of who would bring that element would be Ro. Guess what? We already have Ro. Her name is Kira. So from pretty much every perspective, like, it just makes the most sense. Like, outside of just doing the cowardly route and just doing TNG over again, which they were already in the process of doing over in Voyager, this was just the most logical step if you're going to take the Dominion War into the next phase. It's like the Klingons just make the most sense.
All right, I think it's time to bring back a Trek classic. If you could recast this episode with any cast, who would it be? And I'm going to throw in a little twist here. And if you could pull in one character from another series and have them join this cast, and don't worry about eras or timelines or anything. Any one cast to come in and join, any one character to come in and join a new cast. Dan, you start us off this time.
So is the exercise here, we're looking for a different generation in this episode and then one additional character as a wild card?
Any different cast, and then you pull in one character from any show.
Yeah, I think the easiest transition would be the cast of Voyager. You've got all the same major players and parts. I think Janeway would be just as icy in battle, and the one character I'd really love to see though, because Otto, you pointed out while we were watching, they really had a neat beat when they had the pre-war pep talk in the medical bay, and I'd love to have seen Bones giving that speech, and having his frontier grumpiness be the sergeant leading his men into battle for a change would have been a really interesting change there.
Frank.
I'm gonna cheat and use almost the same answer for both. This would really be cool with Strange New Worlds. Christopher Pike with his type of cowboy diplomacy, kind of the same, not the same as Cisco's, but with a awesome supporting cast of players that we've all come to appreciate. You've got your badasses, you've got your diplomats, you've got your smart thinking minds, you've got somebody that could sit in an engineering station that blows up, lots of things. But in the same vein as what you just said, Dan, and I'm not sucking up to our illustrious hosts when I say this, imagine Babs, imagine having the good Dr. Mbenga and with Chapel ready to wage war and kick some ass while in sick bay and like tending to somebody with a hypo spray and then getting a widespread phaser and killing a bitch as they walk in, and then going right back to what he was doing and just giving a look to the camera like, do no harm. Freeze frame.
We did get Cisco literally winking, like just off camera, so that would be pretty close. Stars, go ahead. What do you have cooking?
So I think I'm going to go for a remix here. I'm going to go ahead and say I would like to see the TOS cast in this episode. I feel like you guess what? Like they're the original. I feel like you could do some really interesting stuff here, and it being like, assuming we had the exact same script pretty much. I could see like Chapel and Uhura maybe having the same kind of like dynamic as Dax and Kira, because especially in Strange New Worlds, Uhura is kind of intimated to be like in that kind of transition phase into becoming looser and more more at home with herself. And my wild card is Worf. Guess what? You keep that same wild card, but he's way more disruptive. Because guess what? Like, especially if you make this post Wrath of Khan TOS, like it depends on obviously what period. But even like TOS, like the original series Kirk, like doesn't like Klingons very much, and I feel like if you bring Worf in as like maybe not a Starfleet officer, maybe you have to change some bits about Worf. Maybe he's earlier on in his career, maybe he's time displaced or whatever. I don't know. The particulars don't really matter. But if you could consider the kind of character that Worf is, where he's intensely honorable, but just grumpy as all hell, I feel like he'd bounce off of these characters really, really interestingly. Like, I always want to see Kirk and Worf interact in this, and seeing some of that antagonistic energy, like some of that, I run all the way to that Nibrate Alliance line. I could see Shatner doing that, and Worf having the same kind of stung reaction, because Kirk, guess what? We take shots at Shatner every now and then, but he's very good at a galling speech designed to kick you up your ass and go, oh, wait, yeah, I'm a hero. I'm a Starfleet officer. I'm going to do my goddamn duty. Risk is our business, I could see that working.
Obviously, from TOS, and you mean Colonel Worf from Star Trek 6.
No.
The best movie,
I'm afraid
by the way.
Look, Star Trek would never pass up the opportunity to add time travel to a story, so it would be classic Worf. Yeah, I'm also going original series. We've seen enough of Kirk interacting with Klingons for that story to make sense. They're already antagonistic across a couple different episodes. I love his little Ross from Friends hand gesture against the Klingons when he wants to flip them off, and then obviously you have trouble with tribbles. And I'm going to bring back Data to join the cast, because I think what you say about Ro and Kira overlapping is true. So there is a shelf life on this. But Data and Spock interacting is going to be magic, because they're going to teach each other about humanity, what they've learned so far, and it's going to be, slightly wrong, but it's going to be fun along the way. All the Bones and Spock stuff you can absolutely do with Bones and Data, because they did it with Pulaski anyway in TNG. And so, all the relationships and conflicts that are already there, you can redo with like a fresh-ish character. And obviously you wouldn't do like another 3 or 4 seasons after, because it would get redundant. But just to see those interactions with a slightly different established character, I think could be a lot of fun. All right, we had so many scenes that were like all-timers. I told Stars before we started, I didn't remember all these scenes being in one episode. You have the root beer scene. You have the one I mentioned at the end with Cisco kind of goading Worf into doing the right thing. We had Rom stealing Quark's phaser and then leaving an IOU sign, and Odo just roasting him. So I feel like I've been doing a lot of round tabling, but lightning round. Your favorite single scene from this? Stars. We'll start with you.
Oh, it's so tricky. You know what? I actually really love that scene where Worf goes into Quarks, and you just get pretty much everything. Even if you haven't watched TNG and you have no idea who Worf is, you immediately work out. He's not like other Klingons. He orders prune juice instead of blood wine. Guess what? Even if you're going to laugh at him, don't laugh at him to his face. He doesn't quite get humans, but he does kind of enough to know when you're bullshitting him by calling darts poker with tips. Like, what the fuck are you saying to me? You get your classic Worf humor of him throwing the dart and blowing at the dartboard. You get like a little bit of that frisson between him and Dax. Like, guess what? That chemistry ignited quick. They were already interested in each other. And you immediately get a feel for exactly what the character is. And honestly, even in just this one scene, he's a more credible threat and a more credible individual than he almost ever was on TNG, because he actually gets to beat up a guy and it sticks and it matters and it's important to the plot. And Picard isn't off to the side going, no, Mr. Worf, we are enlightened 24th century human beings. Like, sometimes you gotta punch a motherfucker. Sometimes, That's the TS9 way. The Maquis way.
Okay, Frank, do you remember what your favorite scene is, or do you forget?
It's cheating, but I've got to say, when they decide that they're going to communicate through Dukat with Garrick, and they bring Garrick in just to take measurements, and Garrick is so in tune, he doesn't have to stand around for long. He already knows what's going on. Everybody in the room, and Worf's just sitting there like, I really have to play along, and we really have to conspire with this motherfucker. All right, fine, yes. Blah, blah, blah. Here's my line. Okay, thank you. Garrick just leaves. And Sisko's got this look on his face like, this is how we do stuff here. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll just piggyback because that's my favorite too. It's smart writing and it's smart protagonists. And it's like one of 4 or 5 scenes in this 2-parter where you're like, if this was a sitcom, they would have done everything exactly the wrong way for laughs, and it would have created more complications. And they're like, no, we got enough problems in our life with the Klingons. We don't need to act dumb and struggle through this. They threaded the needle in very smart ways, and it was still a struggle. So I really like that. That's smart writing. Dan, what is your favorite scene?
Well, guys, that was Sisko getting a suit was mine also, okay. But I'll tell you why. So there's a few things that we didn't touch on yet. So first, it's a way. Not everybody in that room is on the same team, but they're all working towards a common goal. And this is how we do things. This is how Sisko does things. This is his style. Worf is now in on it, and in this scene, he becomes a part to how they play in this weird frontier diplomacy situation that they're stuck in. So he's starting to get a vibe, and he's smart enough from his experience to realize how things are done, to just sit back and observe and learn. But I also have an alternate. So I also appreciated the scene where it was Martok who confronts Worf about his son in the room, and so we know Worf has a style all his own, and we know that Martok is presented as a traditional Klingon. Call him an antagonist if you will, but they're opposed to each other in the scene. And so the way that they both stick to their own styles and confront each other in exchange, and what could be just a flat exposition scene really just leapt off the page and just was remarkable and memorable to me, especially because now here's a situation we've seen before where Duras before was fighting over his son's honor, Terrell, and Worf was able to overcome that situation by sticking to his own ethical code and not killing the child. Here we have a different scene where again another child of a high-ranking Klingon member has been bested by Worf, and seeing the fallout after the fact of what happens and how they resolve their feelings, really, speaking in the language of a warrior. Really interesting insight. I'd love to be in that scene. I'd love to be a fly on the wall to see how they work that out.
Yeah, I think we called out while it was going on. Like, that's instead of a handshake for Klingons, they just start testing each other. They'll push each other verbally, they'll goad each other, and that's how you you get their attention and respect. So, yeah, it's good insight.
And we see that with the Cardassians too, with Dukat and Garrick, trying to one up each other with their verbal jibes, and it just we get so much of that in this episode, and really it helps define the different sides of the war and their motivations. Great writing.
All right, I think it's time for another Memory Alpha poll. This one for Dan, who already mentioned we get a new ship. During the battle sequences between the Federation and Klingon fleets, the effects department used Playmates toys, Ertl model kits, and Hallmark Bird of Prey Christmas ornaments in the background in an effort to keep production costs down. When one of the toy ships was required to explode, special effects manager Gary Monak filled it with explosives and party glitter. This episode was nominated for an Emmy Award for Outstanding Special Visual Effects.
If it works, it works. Guess what? I didn't notice it was a toy, did you? There's some really, really good ship choreography in this episode as well. Like, you mentioned, they're auditioning for First Contact. Kinda. Like that shot of DS9, in the middle ground, you actually get one of those rare instances of guess what? Space happens on multiple planes. It's not all just two-dimensional. Three-dimensional movement is a thing. You get Klingon birds of prey here, you get down here beneath the station. Guess what? You only have to do that shot once, and it makes an immediate visual contrast when everything else looks kind of the same.
Okay, we've already hit our... We've already, see, this is normally where I would jump in and probably argue with you or something, but rest in peace. If Idle ever comes back, he can have the reins again.
I do like. I just want to say this is the first time we've ever done an only American show with no Brits on it, and it's going great, I think. And sometimes you just,
Do you want to try that again?
High marks on that accent, though, Stars. It's very, very close to being believable. Since it is Star's birthday, we'll do a little bit more Worf chat. This is... So he's coming from...
Today.
He's welcome to the show. He's coming from Picard to Sisko, who as commanders are pretty similar. I mean, Sisko's a little more get in there, do it myself, hands-on than Picard. But, Worf flourishes when there's a strong hand at the reins. And I was thinking, I don't know how well he'd work with Kirk. I think Kirk likes to do it all himself instead of sending a security officer. I don't know if Burnham would be a good fit. What other shows could you see him working or catastrophically not working in terms of, mixing well with his captain?
Picard season 2. Sorry.
That's cheating. You know what? I actually think he'd get decently well on with Voyagers, like Carson, especially with Janeway. Because Janeway is a scientist, but she has a backbone. She has a really steely backbone that shows up, especially in something like Scientific Method, when it's like, oh, you want to try and drive me insane? Cool, I'm going to drive us in between some two binary stars, and you guys are going to just puss out. Worf would respect that. That's a show of force, of intent. Scorpion or Equinox. These are the kind of moves that you do, and Worf respects you for doing them. So I think Janeway he'd respect. Yeah, I feel like Kirk and Worf would have guess what? There is a reason there is no security chief on board the original Enterprise. Kirk is the security chief. So, there's, they would fight about who gets to fight. That's the problem.
I think I would rather have Worf over Lieutenant Shax in Lower Decks. That character never really gelled for me, but he winds up playing the same straight man role that Worf typically tends to land. I think that'd be an interesting note for the series.
I'm not stealing my own answer from earlier, but Strange New Worlds. Pike respects Klingons. He's worked with them on Borath. He worked with them on Discovery. And Spock obviously loves to go get drunk with Klingons, so they've got a good relationship with Klingons on that show. Pike appreciates his crew and all their individual nuances and the skills that they bring and the melting pot that it creates. And I think Worf would thrive, at least, if nothing else, he would have the best spaghetti dinners.
And then Mbenga and Worf see each other, and then it's either they either kill each other or they have the most wonderful fanfic things happen. But
I feel like Worf and La'an are kind of like Worf and Tasha.
Yeah,
So,
a little bit recursive. Yeah.
maybe Worf could have a romantic relationship with Paul Wesley instead of La'an, and we could see where that goes. That, it is the
Wolf gets his
2020s.
heart broken because of Carol Marcus. Yeah, no.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, so I've already broken up a delicious peanut butter and chocolate duo, but let's go around before we wrap things up and hit our worst moments, because I am struggling to think of one, and I think I might have one, but it's slim pickings because this top to bottom is a pretty solid episode. So Frank, I'll throw you to the wolves first. What kind of caught your ear is, ooh, let's not do that.
You got to nitpick. To your point, because this is really good Trek. It was a running gag to keep showing Morn over and over because we know as we watch DS9, Morn is the running joke. Okay, I get it. But in even a 2-part episode, using him 4 or 5 times as a background running gag, surely to God, there's someone else or something else that you could use. It got a little long in the tooth. Oh, and here's the Morn joke. That's, and again, I'm nitpicking for that.
Dan, what grinded your gears?
Something that was left unsaid, and I'm not sure if at this time they had designs to get Jadzia and Worf together. If at the top of the episode when they first meet, in fact, and Worf mentions that he knows that she is also Curzon Dax, and she replies with a Klingon line. And you'd mentioned earlier you had all the translators, but I happen to know this one in particular. So what she says back to Worf in Klingon translates to, "Yeah, but I'm a lot better looking than he was," and Worf, kind of tacitly acknowledges that. That's straight up flirting. Jadzia's got designs on him from the very first moment that they meet.
Because she has eyes and she's got good taste.
Yeah, and then later on when she comes to him in the holodeck and fights with them, I mean that's the way you come onto a Klingon. We all know that. So, I think that there are seeds of that relationship far down the road here in this episode, but they're not really made explicit. You have to be a real super fan to be able to translate the Klingon in real time to know what's going on or to really read into her actions in the holodeck. So, maybe it didn't belong in the war episode, and that's fine. But it took a very long time for anything else to materialize, and I think that's a bit of a shame because I did enjoy them as a couple later on. So a missed opportunity for them to at least circle back by the end of the episode and have her reveal what she actually said to him.
Since you brought it up, I did promise this translation. Martok's son Drex.
Don't give me the translation. Answer me now.
When Drex is shouting at Odo, he asks him, "Does your mother let you talk to adult men?" So I don't know if that's a 1-for-1 translation. But apparently for Klingons,
Incredible.
that's about as rough as it gets language-wise. All right, I'm a little generic here, but my worst moment was actually how tropey a lot of the dialogue was. Maybe it was because it was our first 2-parter back-to-back, but there was a lot of we could finish their line before they said it, and they gave that appropriate TV pause in between the second half of the line, and it was 4 or 5 times where it's okay, it fits the character and the situation and everything, but it's just so obvious. They did a lot of smart writing and some dumb writing just with that dialogue, I thought. So, all right, Stars, I've given you enough time. Is there a worst moment in this Warfathon?
Yes, but I do have to take umbrage with Dan's point, and I'd say that if you look at how Terry Farrell is looking at Michael Dorn when she says that line of, "Oh, well, I'm much better looking than he is," and he looks around at everyone else to make sure that they don't understand what she just said, because he is terrified of acknowledging it, and then he goes, "Yeah, I suppose so," and the way she goes, you don't need to know Klingon to understand that. It's not quite as explicit as, yeah, you had the hands of a surgeon, but maybe I'm just really in tune with Terry Farrell. Who knows? My worst moment is kind of related to what we were talking about with relation to where they were thinking of taking the show and how they landed on this. And it's something you actually brought up, Otto, which is the line which does a lot of legwork and also kind of represents some cowardice. The Bajoran government has agreed to abide by the Federation Council's decisions on this matter. in relation to the war with Klingons and Cardassians. Considering we spent 3 seasons building up Bajor as a autonomous, religious and political and sociological identity, don't worry about it. They're fine. It's fine. You're not going to get a visit from Wynn. You're not going to see any other named Bajoran character. Kira says it's fine, so it's fine. The Bajorans are a monolith for the purpose of this episode. And to be fair, you do circle back around to this point, and you do get some discussion of how this is affecting things throughout the season, with stuff like indiscretion, and a few other episodes. But it just kind of represents a strong back down from the strong focus on Bajor as a independent entity to just have them be a satellite to the Federation's decisions. And yes, the Federation's decisions are the smart ones, so ergo Bajor should follow along with it. But guess what? We are a drama about political decisions, and people don't always make the right decisions. And even if they want to make the right decisions, they should complain loudly about having to make the right decisions. So, yeah, like, maybe we could have dropped 1 or 2 scenes or just added a scene of minor Bajoran stuff, or even just an acknowledgement of, from Wynn of, like you say, well, if the Kardashians get what's coming to them, then, maybe that's just for the best. But we didn't get that because that's not what the focus of this episode is, or what the show is really focused on now. So, that'd be my worst moment.
Yeah, probably a full third of DS9 is just about how much the Bajorans and Cardassians hate each other. And the war or the occupation is over, but not really, because we see the ripples of that constantly, and just that animosity, for that to be completely set aside here. And I don't think Dukat and Kira even interacted, even though he was on the station. So, yeah, they could, they could do a little bit more there, but... All right, gentlemen, time to wrap up. Stars. You must have a bevy of choices for our rating criteria for this episode.
Will it be Ducat's pointy uniform top pointing into his crotch?
No, that would be much too easy. Gentlemen, how many...
He's got to tuck it to one side, right, when he sits down. You can't just go straight down with that uniform.
It's so phallic, isn't it? It's just like, it's such a suggestion.
It's pointing. Look.
Kira, look, did you see? This went into your mother, and she's like, fucking no, don't do this.
Can't believe Dan's holding his tongue right now, but...
Gentlemen, how many cowardly Klingon officers retreating to the Nibrite Alliance out of 10 would you like to give this episode?
Frank, you kick us off.
How many inches around Commander Sisto's waist? He's lost a little weight. No,
just a little weight.
Well, it wasn't Star's favorite scene. It was only Frank and Dan and my favorite scene. So it's not.
There you go.
I only picked that because I figured no one else would pick it. Oddly enough, I mean, I would have easily gone with.
Yeah, no, Frank. We know you're not like other girls.
I know. I would have gone with Gowron's appearance first because Robert. So a little bit of being on the hot plate here, having to go first, setting the tone for what will be everyone else's ratings. Don't want to break the rating scale. If I wanted to introduce anybody to Trek that wasn't a starship, but it was just a really good 2 hours or an hour 40 in space, and great plot points that, I could explain everything in 5 minutes before I turned it on, and then you've got it from there. This would be one of them. Well acted, well shot, great action, no real lulls, no dragging parts. The music score was fantastic. Special effects, obviously, fantastic. You've got almost every named actor from the final seasons in there, with the exception of Wynn and, thank God, Jake. Nothing is a 10 to me.
Jake was there in spirit, by the way, based on what Cisco was wearing.
He was all over.
Bus. I'm going to go 9.85. Cowardly Klingon officers running back with their batlets tucked between their tails and their legs.
985.
You're gonna shake the ship apart at that rating, Frank. Wow.
All right, Stars, it's your turn to raise that average. What would you give this episode?
So here's the thing: it's like there are occasional nitpicks. I actually wasn't as enamored with that scene with Garrett, Cisco, Kira, and everything, where they like hint at the Cardassian invasion, because I feel like it takes a little bit too long for Garrett to catch on. Like, we all love Garrett as the obvious spy who doesn't even pretend he's not a spy, ergo he's the best spy. But it's like, we're talking about tactical intelligence there. You really like get with the program. He takes a little bit too long. And like I mentioned, the slightly cowardly, the Bajoran government is fine. That being said, I have watched this episode like 20 times. I had it on DVD when I was a child. It brought Worf into DS9. It watered my crops. I have a fresher complexion as a result of this episode. Pride Month, I feasted. So this is a 9.9 cowardly Klingon officers retreating all the way to the Neighborite Alliance out of 10 for me.
Dan, where do you sit?
Not as much, guys. I hate to say it. This, so we talk. It's a two-parter, so we have to look at it in terms of would this stand alone as a movie? It's a feature length. It would not. It's a transitional episode. We're taking established first 3 seasons, turning it on its ear of a show that we want to retain the viewers, but we also want to bring in some new eyeballs here. And so as such, they're drawing on a lot of things that just aren't shown. Stars, you mentioned Bajor is not shown. Dominion does not appear overtly in this episode, although it's mentioned a few times. Don't even see the wormhole. Don't go to the Gamma Quadrant. We get some really classic battle scenes, but they're all within a context of a much larger storyline that we're only seeing glimpses of. So if I were to try to introduce somebody to Deep Space Nine or to Star Trek in general, this would not be the episode. There's too much subtext here that somebody would need to know that I would have to pause and explain. And just the few lines that they give us of exposition aren't enough to bridge that gap. That said, I enjoy all the characters. I love seeing them in a different situation that really tests them, lets them be excellent with each other and on their own. This episode plays to not only the actors' strengths, but also the characters' strengths, and lets them shine in a way that they very seldom get the opportunity to do, and all the actors rise to the challenge. It is an excellent episode of Star Trek, but it does not stand alone as one of the highest that I would rate. I'm going with 8 out of 10. Cowardly Cardassian operatives retreating to the Neighborite Alliance.
Yeah, well, so much of Deep Space Nine is serialized. I'm not sure I can knock it on that grounds. I don't think it needs to stand alone to be a great episode. But that said, it did feel, in parts, it felt a little formulaic, which, again, 90s era Trek is just famous for that. I think I mentioned, like, between every single scene, every transition had to be like an exterior of the space station, and you could kind of tell what was coming with a lot of the dialogue and stuff. But one thing that I don't think we mentioned that I really enjoyed, what would normally be dry exposition was done in an interesting way. So that scene with Garrick, whether you liked certain character choices, they could have just sat at a table and had all this dialogue. Instead, they had a little bit of, kinetic energy with him orbiting them, and that little twist on that's how they deliver the information instead of him just overhearing it. The stuff when the Klingons are on screen, they're so over the top, they're so dramatic. Both of them, Martok and Gowron, that it's, again, they're not sitting at the table talking. We had knives and guns and phaser fight, and it was all over. You had a little bit of romance, you had a little bit of humor, and usually I like episodes that focus on one of those and really dig down, but this had something for everyone. So I won't knock it for not having all the necessary information. I think a lot of episodes we run into in the future will have that issue. I try to convince myself what the score is as I talk. I never know going in. I'm going to give this... Oh, and I forgot all these scenes actually came from this episode. We just got to count for something. It's got a lot of just single iconic scenes. I will give this 9.6 cowardly Klingon officers retreating to the Neighborite Alliance out of 10. So fellas, any parting thoughts about Worf's grand escapades? Are you looking forward to seeing more of him in DS9?
I'm looking more of forgiving, but not forgetting.
Yeah, I'll say the addition of Worf to the cast does something that we haven't mentioned yet, but there's a lot of mention of pride and representation. The number of people of color on Deep Space Nine far fewer than what we saw in the Next Generation, and so I'm just glad to see that representation, to have so many black actors and actresses with Penny Gerald, have their own scenes with each other, really being able to be strong and shine and have that representation.
Yeah, and we didn't even have Jake in this episode, so
right.
He comes in with
well, next episode's all about that.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, he comes in the next episode, fantastic. So we're gonna cut this one off and go get to the visitor as soon as we can. Thanks for joining us on Trek Trek. You can hit up all the links below for viewing all the rest of our reviews, which are probably a little longer than this one. I think we did well for a two-parter, gentlemen. So, and for a Worf episode. So thanks for keeping it concise. We'll see you next time.